Kyle Richards sat on the edge of the stone bench outside her home, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes, normally full of sparkle and charm, were now distant and hollow. Her daughter, sitting silently beside her, mirrored the same broken expression, both of them caught in a moment that would change everything. Behind them, her husband stood, smiling. It was not the smile of joy. It was something else, something that didn't fit the scene. This image, haunting and bizarre, told a story louder than any headline. A mother and daughter, weighed down by grief, confusion, and sorrow. And behind them, a husband and father whose expression had begun to draw speculation from all corners of their world. The tension in the Richards household hadn't been a secret. For months, there had been whispers. Late arrivals home, cold shoulders at family events, subtle jabs on social media. Even the cast members of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills had noticed a shift. But this visual confirmation hit harder than any rumor ever could. Kyle had always held her family close. From the outside, they seemed like the perfect Beverly Hills unit. Success, love, legacy, beauty, it all seemed intact. But that illusion was crumbling, and it was beginning to happen in public view. The day this photo was taken, Kyle had just come back from a private therapy session with her daughter. Insiders say the session was an emotional attempt to bridge the gap that had started growing between Kyle and her husband. The daughter, according to those close to the family, had been the glue for years, encouraging her parents to stay close, to keep the bond alive. But lately, even she seemed to be giving up. They had all sat down for what was supposed to be a healing conversation. What started as a quiet talk ended with the daughter in tears, Kyle silent and devastated, and the father walking away with a smirk that would haunt them later. The smile wasn't just strange, it was jarring. It raised questions that even longtime fans couldn't answer. What was he smiling at? What emotion did that smile carry? Relief? Bitterness? Detachment? Kyle's sister, who had been deeply involved in the family dynamic for years, refused to comment. But one cryptic post on her Instagram story the following day said it all. Sometimes people smile when they've already let go. The emotional toll this moment captured was deep. Kyle's daughter had been her shadow for years. Through every season of the show, every scandal, every success, she was there. This wasn't just a daughter watching her parents fight. This was a daughter realizing her family was falling apart. In the days that followed, fans speculated endlessly online. Reddit threads exploded with theories. Instagram pages posted side-by-sides of past family moments, showing the evolution from warmth to distance. "This smile speaks volumes," one user wrote. "He's emotionally disconnected. Look at how close Kyle and her daughter are, and look how far behind he stands." Psychologists weighed in. Body language experts analyzed the photo frame by frame. Kyle and her daughter are in sync emotionally. They're bonded in their sadness, one expert noted. But the husband's posture and expression tell a different story. There's no shared emotion. It's almost as if he's glad to not be involved. What had led to this moment? Some insiders believe the cracks began years ago, buried beneath the showbiz pressure and public appearances. Fame, fortune, and filming schedules took their toll. Kyle, balancing motherhood, reality TV, and personal ambitions, had been stretched thin. Her husband, meanwhile, had grown increasingly distant, focused on his own ventures, and often traveling for work. The pandemic had forced them under the same roof for extended periods during which, according to close friends, the facade began to break. Small fights turned into long silences. Confessions that were meant to heal instead deepened wounds. Their daughter saw it all. One night, a close friend of Kyle's revealed, the daughter broke down in the middle of dinner. "You two don't even see each other anymore," she allegedly said through tears. "You talk to the cameras more than to each other." That moment had been buried, until now. The photo symbolized not just a family breaking, but a daughter's heart breaking with it. Her face showed the weight of trying to fix something that might already be broken. Kyle's expression showed guilt, helplessness, and pain. And behind them, her husband's smile cast a long shadow over the entire scene. Entertainment outlets jumped on the image. A picture worth 1,000 tears, one headline read. Kyle Richards' silent cry, said another. But behind the headlines was a family in quiet collapse. The daughter, once eager to follow in her mother's public footsteps, had suddenly gone silent online. No posts. No stories. No red carpets. She was grieving something that hadn't been publicly announced, but was already deeply felt. Inside sources claim that Kyle has since pulled back from filming. She's reportedly canceled events, postponed shoots, and taken time to reconnect with what matters. But what does that mean when the core of what mattered, her family, is hanging by a thread? Friends close to her say Kyle is devastated but determined. She's never been one to give up easily. And now, more than ever, she's putting her daughter first. She sees how much this is hurting her, one friend said. And Kyle blames herself for not seeing the signs sooner. There's also talk of mediation not just between husband and wife, but between father and daughter. Their bond, once strong, has eroded in silence. The daughter reportedly feels abandoned by the emotional absence, by the smile that didn't fit the pain. In recent weeks, Kyle has leaned heavily on her sisters, her close circle of girlfriends, and even old castmates who've seen her at her worst. There have been long walks, phone calls into the night, and hours spent in reflection. What happens next? Only time will tell. But this image, the sad eyes of a mother and daughter, and the smile of a man no longer in sync, will remain as a powerful snapshot of a turning point. Some say it was just bad timing, that maybe the smile was unrelated, but the emotions in Kyle and her daughter's eyes are undeniable. And if you look closely, they're not just sad, they're exhausted. Tired from fighting a war they never wanted, trying to hold on to a connection that someone else may have already let go of. Behind the glamour and lights of Beverly Hills is a woman sitting with her daughter, aching for something they might not be able to repair. And behind them, a man smiles. Kyle Richards sat on the edge of the stone bench outside her home, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes, normally full of sparkle and charm, were now distant and hollow. Her daughter, sitting silently beside her, mirrored the same broken expression, both of them caught in a moment that would change everything. Behind them, her husband stood, smiling. It was not the smile of joy. It was something else, something that didn't fit the scene. This image, haunting and bizarre, told a story louder than any headline. A mother and daughter, weighed down by grief, confusion, and sorrow. And behind them, a husband and father whose expression had begun to draw speculation from all corners of their world. The tension in the Richards household hadn't been a secret. For months, there had been whispers. Late arrivals home. Cold shoulder. The stillness between them said everything. Kyle Richards sat motionless, her eyes staring into the middle distance, and her daughter leaned closer, shoulders slouched in silent solidarity. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Their sadness was written into every line of their faces. And standing just behind them, as if removed from the emotional weight of the moment, her husband smiled. It wasn't the smile of comfort. It wasn't the smile of a man sharing pain, or even pretending to understand it. It was something else, something out of place. They had arrived that afternoon hoping to talk, maybe even heal. Kyle and her daughter had spent the morning together, going over old memories, sorting through family photos, and preparing themselves emotionally for what would come next. They weren't naive. They knew the conversation would be hard, but they believed, at least hoped, it would be honest. The issue wasn't just between Kyle and her husband. It was affecting their daughter. She had watched her parents grow apart for months, maybe longer. It showed in the way they no longer touched. The way they stopped laughing at each other's jokes. The way her father was always smiling, but never at them. The meeting had been set in neutral ground. Not in the house. Not in public. Somewhere quiet, private. But when they arrived, the distance between them felt physical. Kyle reached for her husband's hand. He pulled it away too quickly, pretending to fix the cuff on his sleeve. Her daughter noticed. She always noticed. They talked or tried to. Kyle asked him how he felt. He responded vaguely. "I'm fine," he said. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't. Everyone knew it wasn't. That smile, that strange, permanent smile, never left his face. Even when Kyle's voice cracked. Even when their daughter's eyes filled with tears. It was as if he couldn't, or wouldn't, feel what they were feeling. For Kyle, that moment was the culmination of years of quiet disappointments. The missed anniversaries. The unreturned texts. The emotional distance that kept growing wider until they were two people living parallel lives under the same roof. Her daughter had grown up in that house, once full of love, laughter, energy. But lately it felt like a museum. Cold. Quiet. Filled with ghosts. Kyle remembered the early years. How he used to make her laugh just by walking into the room. How he used to kiss her on the forehead before every trip, no matter how short. How their daughter used to jump into bed between them, and they'd all fall asleep together. Those memories didn't just fade. They fractured. Now, sitting side by side with the one person who still shared her pain, Kyle realized something unbearable. The man she loved had emotionally exited the marriage long ago. He was present in body, but gone in spirit. The daughter looked up at her father once, expecting him to say something, anything. But instead, she saw that smile again. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't fake. But it wasn't kind either. It was distant. As if he were somewhere else. As if he had made peace with something they hadn't even been told yet. Later, they would say that this image, captured just after that conversation, wasn't staged. It wasn't meant for the world to see. But somehow, it made its way into the public sphere, and it told a story without words. Kyle's fans noticed instantly. "She looks destroyed," one tweeted. "Why is he smiling like that?" another posted. The comments poured in, theories stacking up like bricks. Some blamed the pressure of fame. Others speculated betrayal. A few, heartbreakingly, suggested he was relieved. That he'd already moved on emotionally, and this conversation was just a formality. For Kyle's daughter, the moment was surreal. This was the man who had once carried her on his shoulders, who had waited up for her after her first dance, who used to tell her, "There's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for you." But that man wasn't here today. This man, the smiling man behind her, was a stranger. And that realization hurt more than any argument. Back home that evening, the silence continued. Kyle retreated to her room. Her daughter went to hers. Her husband? He sat downstairs, scrolling through his phone, as if nothing had happened. The photo continued to go viral. "A family frozen in emotional disconnect," one journalist wrote. "A mother-daughter bond overshadowed by the absence of empathy," said another. Headlines didn't need details. The image said it all. Insiders close to the family began speaking off the record. One said Kyle had been trying for months to bring her husband back emotionally. She tried vacations, therapy, letters. She even asked him to take a sabbatical from work to reconnect, they said. But he never saw the urgency. Another source said the daughter had confronted her father more than once. "Why don't you care?" she asked him. His answer? A shrug. In therapy, the term used was emotional absenteeism. A condition not of malice but indifference. "He's not cruel," the therapist reportedly said. "He's just not there anymore." Kyle struggled with that diagnosis. Not being hated, just being forgotten. Being invisible. Her daughter took it harder. She still remembered the old version of her father. The one who built pillow forts and played dress-up and cheered the loudest at school plays. She couldn't reconcile that man with the one standing behind them, smiling, disconnected. In the following days, Kyle was seen spending more time with her daughter. They took long walks, visited family friends, and spent nights watching old movies. They were healing together, but separately from him. He meanwhile stayed the same. Unchanged. His smile still ever present, even as the house grew quieter, the dinners shorter, and the hugs rarer. People around Kyle began to notice her transformation. She was letting go, but gently. She didn't yell. She didn't slam doors. She simply stopped expecting the things that once defined her marriage. And in that letting go, there was pain, but also peace. Her daughter, now more protective than ever, began standing up in subtle ways. Asking him questions he avoided. holding her mother's hand at public events, skipping joint appearances where the three of them used to smile for cameras, pretending all was well. The reality behind the smile had unraveled. Somewhere along the way, he had checked out. Maybe from fear, maybe from pride, maybe because letting go felt easier than fighting to stay. But Kyle and her daughter? They were still here, still hurting, still trying, even if the person behind them wasn't. They say every photo tells a story, but this one screamed. A mother and daughter, united in sadness. A father, separated not by distance but by disconnection. A family that once glowed with love, now dimmed by silence. And a smile that may never be understood.